Here we go. Preseason ends on Saturday. Opener is Tuesday. Rockets opener is Wednesday. Only seems appropriate. It's against Harden's old team, the Thunder, as we wait to see who his new team is going to be. From the reporting that you have done, what's the latest you can tell us on James Harden?
Hey guys, I think there's more conversation, maybe even a little more traction with more teams here in the last several days, and Houston has, they haven't moved past Philadelphia and Brooklyn, his preferred destinations. Those are still two teams who I think are going to be engaged in this. But you're finding more teams, I'm told, and talking to teams in both the East and the West who want to be involved in this, and who I think, especially because Harden has 2 years left on his contract, it's not a one-year rental, are showing a willingness to maybe offer up some assets that might be enough in the end to get James Harden. The one thing that is happening, guys, the Rockets are working with James Harden. They're making him aware of the scenarios out there because I think if teams are going to trade for him, they want to have a sense of how James Harden feels about being there.
Woj, one thing you reported was that the Sixers are willing to put Ben Simmons in the deal, but talks haven't gotten anywhere. What are the chances that Harden lands in Philly with or without Simmons?
I think it's really hard for Houston to do a deal with the Sixers that doesn't include Ben Simmons. And listen, I think where Philly is, they're very careful about putting him in a deal that's not going to get them back more than James Harden. I think if Ben Simmons was going to be in a deal to Houston, it would perhaps have to be even bigger than just James Harden. I'm not sure that's how Houston looks at this. I think they'd like Ben Simmons plus a bunch more assets. So those two teams aren't close. That doesn't mean they won't re-engage here at some point. But I think especially Doc Rivers is very hesitant about breaking up that Simmons-Embiid partnership. And I think certainly Daryl Morey has qualms about it without getting back even more than James Harden. Remember, you're trading a 31-year-old player for a 24-year-old player, and especially given that Joel Embiid's in his mid-20s, puts you on a different trajectory. It really closes your window, limits your window to maybe how long you have potentially a contender for. So they're going to be careful with the Ben Simmons piece there. You saw Daryl Morey come out yesterday and said, we're not trading Ben Simmons. Well, I certainly don't think they're trading Ben Simmons just in a deal that looks like it's straight up with some picks for James Harden. I think they're going to want a lot more than James Harden. That might not be a deal that's available to the Sixers. And I think for right now, you're going to see them continue with the Embiid Ben Simmons partnership as Doc Rivers, starts his tenure in Philly.
Let me ask you this though, Woj. What happens to players around the league, East, West, that hear their names potentially floated out there, and then they're not traded in the Harden deal? And you look at what happened with the Lakers and what happened with AD and those names being floated, and it didn't happen, and the Lakers completely collapsed at that point. What happens then?
Well, Kate, you know what happens, guys, in a locker room. It can become a major problem for a head coach, for his teammates. Guys get uneasy when they hear that. And, hey, unless you're one of 4 or 5 players in this league, and even then, you're probably going to be involved in trade talks at some point in your career. There's very few players who won't be. And I think if you're on a team that's a contender right now in the NBA, you're not one of the best 1 or 2 players, certainly as long as you're not the best player, because you're not trading your best player in a deal like this. You're usually trying to pair them up. But if you're a very good young player on a team, that's a playoff team in the NBA, you're probably in a conversation with Houston about James Harden, just like you might with other great players if they become available. Because what Houston wants, besides draft picks and potentially pick swaps, they want your best young player, or they want you in a 3-way deal to go find a young player that they really like on a third team and get him in this deal and give that team assets. So that's going to be the conversation for Harden, and it can and does upset the order of teams, especially as the season is getting going, and that's why teams are so careful when they're going to have talks with Houston. For example, they're going to say, I need you to ask me for this. Give me some plausible deniability so that I can go back to my guys and say, hey, I didn't offer this. They asked me for this, and then we said no. Or the day where you say, okay, yeah, we'll do it, and then you make the trade. But teams are careful in these situations.
That is the NBA's best insider.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus right now.